In the 1960s, the US planned to nuke Israel with hundreds of thermonuclear bombs, and Panama, and Alaska, all in the name of progress driven by a mad scientist to use the most destructive of weapons to build things, excavate canals, carve out harbors, tap oil and gas. This was Project Plowshare. It kept the US busy for 2 decades, burned hundreds of millions of dollars, and exploded dozens of nukes for a bright future. In the most feverish years of the Cold War, when the world got terrifyingly close to blowing itself up. Nukes for peace. Our story begins with the brilliant Hungarian physicist Edward Teller, one of the key scientists of the Manhattan Project, the colossal effort that led to the first nuclear bomb. But almost from the beginning, he dreamt of destroying the world much harder. Traditional nukes, like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki ones, release energy by splitting heavy atoms like uranium. But these are rare, expensive, and the resulting bombs are difficult to scale up. So, Teller lobbied for a different approach: unleash the nuclear fire by smashing together hydrogen atoms. That would allow for bombs thousands of times more powerful. The problem was technically hard, but in the 1950s, Teller solved it. The terrifying new thermonuclear bomb made Hiroshima and Nagasaki look like firecrackers. Nuclear fire strong enough to end human civilization itself. The Soviet Union followed quickly, and the new madness for destruction took over the world. Teller was having the time of his life as he got to chase his nukiest dreams like a bomb so powerful that it would wipe out civilization in one single strike, a real thing the US actually started working on. We've told this story before if you want to watch it. And as the perfectly sane man he was, Teller had other great ideas like nuking the moon to show the commies who's boss. And if H-bombs could destroy the planet, maybe they could also reshape it. The logic wasn't entirely unhinged. Humans had been using explosives for mining and engineering for centuries, and H-bombs offered the same service with much more enthusiasm at a decent cost. Why not use them to dig ditches and make holes at a planetary scale? The idea of nukes for peace was also pretty convenient. With public opinion increasingly opposed to the arms race and ever more terrified by World War III, nuclear engineering was a way to keep on testing nuclear weapons without saying you were testing nuclear weapons. So, in 1957, the US launched Project Plowshare, a bold plan to use nuclear explosions for peaceful engineering. And who would be put at the helm? Exactly. Cutting through continents. In 1956, Egypt had just nationalized the Suez Canal, a vital artery for global trade and oil delivery to Europe. So, one of the first ideas of the new Build with Nukes doctrine was to blast open a new one through the Israeli desert. On the other side of the world, the Panama Canal had long been in need of an upgrade. Scientists explored extension routes and found they would need to remove 1.2 billion cubic meters of earth, 500 Great Pyramids of Giza. A monumental task that would cost $6 billion if done with shovels, but only $3.1 billion with nukes. Time to blast open a panatomic canal. But even Teller understood that before nuking through continents, you should start small. So the first miracle of Project Plowshare would be a new harbor in Alaska. In just a few glorious milliseconds, 5 nukes with the combined punch of 170 Hiroshima bombs would carve out a 500 by 200 meter trench, opening the region to commerce and prosperity. The local communities weren't thrilled at the idea, but Teller insisted that the dangers of nuke engineering had been greatly exaggerated. The major concern was radioactive contamination. Canals and harbors were great, but nobody wanted them glowing with radioactivity for thousands of years. Luckily, Teller had a plan: nuking the land from below. In a nutshell, nuclear excavation works like this. You drill a hole a few hundred meters deep and place the bomb at the bottom. When it goes off, the blast hollows out a cavern in the rock and flash melts its walls into magma. The molten rock pools at the bottom, the ceiling collapses, and the collapse ripples upwards until it reaches the floor, where it forms a crater. The result is a massive hole on top, with the radioactive debris sealed under hundreds of thousands of tons of rock. With the theory looking flawless on paper, the time had come to actually test it. But before the government bombs anything, let's get some propaganda protection, just in case. Our partner Ground News is a website and app built to help you think critically about the information you consume, a mission we fully support. They curate news articles from across the globe, adding context on political bias, reliability, ownership, and summaries that highlight what each side is leaving out. You can even compare headlines to see how bias shapes the narrative. Take this story about Finland planning to lift its ban on nuclear weapons. Some frame it as a prudent response to the state of the world, while others warn of escalation. Ground news also reveals blind spots, stories that only one side is covering, showing you what your usual news feed is hiding. As information bubbles are becoming the norm, thinking critically about the news is no longer optional, and ground news makes it easier to do just that. If you'd like to give them a try, go to ground.news/nutshell or scan the QR code on the screen. Using this link gives you 40% off an unlimited access subscription and directly supports our channel. And now, back to nuking for peace. The fiasco begins. Plowshare debuted in 1961 in the desert of New Mexico. A nuke with the power of 3,100 tons of TNT was buried 360 meters deep in the heart of a salt deposit. The goal was to explore a new idea to generate electricity. The explosion would melt the deposit into a pond of red-hot liquid salt whose heat could be pumped up to power turbines. A hybrid of fusion and geothermal power brought to you by H-bombs. Above ground, hundreds of officials, scientists and international guests had gathered to witness the birth of a new era. Everyone held their breath as the countdown ticked. And then, with a distant thud, the ground shuddered. Deep below, the explosion hollowed a cavern the size of over 10 Olympic swimming pools. But Teller's team had missed a tiny detail. The salt contained far more water than expected, which turned into superheated steam that massively amplified the blast. The hole used to lower the bomb had been designed to collapse and seal itself after the explosion, but the unexpectedly monstrous pressure broke through. So, a few minutes after the blast, a plume of radioactive steam erupted from the shaft, damaging cameras and instruments and bathing everyone in a strangely itchy sauna. The US government tried their best to convince everyone that things hadn't been that bad, but for some reason, the masses had a problem with clouds of radioactive fallout, even from peaceful nukes. But that wouldn't discourage Teller. So, to show the world how cool H-bombs could really be, he scheduled another test, one 30 times more peaceful. In July 1962, while Cuban officials were visiting Moscow to negotiate a missile deal that would almost spark World War III 3 months later, a thermonuclear bomb worth 7 Hiroshima nukes exploded 200 meters underground in the Nevada desert. This time, the goal was to test nuclear excavation itself and check how big the crater could get. The blast displaced 12 million tons of soil and hollowed out a gargantuan crater 100 meters deep and 400 meters across, the largest artificial crater in US history. But digging with nukes is tricky. Bury the bomb too deep and you'll only get a disappointing dent. Bury it too shallow and you risk launching a radioactive cloud into the sky. Which was exactly what happened. Someone had miscalculated the depth of the explosion and a plume of radioactivity punched through. Fallout was detected as far as South Dakota and Illinois, and panic broke out in Utah when radioactive iodine was found in milk. It turned into one of the dirtiest tests on US soil ever. Just one more nuke, bro. The years that followed saw more peaceful explosions and peaceful fallout. Meanwhile, Teller's proposals got weirder. Liquefy tar sands in Canada with nukes. Blast a highway through the Sierra Nevada with nukes. Connect rivers in Mississippi with nukes. But the crown jewel of nuclear dreams was still the Panatomic Canal. A legion of scientists worked on it, and plans got disturbingly far. One of the top contenders was Route 17, an 80-kilometer trench across pristine Panamanian jungle that was short, flat, pretty empty, and perfectly nukeable. 250 bombs with the power of 8,000 Hiroshimas would do the job. 43,000 people across 17,000 square kilometers would still have to be evacuated, just in case. And shockwaves might shatter windows as far as Costa Rica and Colombia. But what were such details in the grand scheme of progress? So let's rewind history and press the button to see what might have happened if Teller had got his way. Ready to push the button? 3, 2, 1. Boom! The first round of nuclear salvos close to both coasts obliterates hundreds of square kilometers of pristine rainforest in seconds, a roaring success. Unfortunately, a cloud of fallout catches the Pacific winds. Weeks later, spikes of radiation are found over the Caribbean, and radioactive iodine, cesium, and strontium start to enter the food chains of both oceans. Tuna and sharks become radioactive. One option would be to stop, but to have a radioactive scar across the jungle, contamination of 2 oceans, and no canal, better push through. So a second round of blasts goes off in the central Chuckanaki River Valley, only to find that the central part of the isthmus had far more clay than expected. As soon as the rainy season hits, landslides clog the new craters like a self-healing wound. The choices: leave a mud-choked glowing blister through the rainforest, or begin a colossal engineering nightmare just to keep the jungle from landsliding onto the canal. Not to mention the ecological apocalypse and the devastating PR victory that 120 megatons of nuclear peace over Latin America would give Cuba and the USSR. Luckily, in our timeline, the US blinked and began to sober up. In 1970, a final report killed the Panatomic Canal, and with it, all nuclear excavation projects. But Teller wasn't ready to let go, so he turned to nuclear fracking. Not because it made sense, but to keep Plowshare alive. Just one more nuke, and I'll build the future, bro. But several explosions later, the result was ultra-expensive, radioactive gas impossible to sell. In 1977, after 20 years and dozens of nukes across the US, Project Plowshare was finally cancelled without reaching any of its goals. No canal, harbour or tunnel had been built. In hindsight, it's easy to see how insane the idea was. But at a time when World War III felt imminent, when kids were playing with atomic toys as mushroom clouds filled the sky, using nukes to build a better future probably did feel like a great idea. You're not a person. You're a planet, made of roughly 40 trillion cells. There is so much of you that if your cells were human-sized, you'd be as big as 20 Mount Everests. For your creepy-crawly inhabitants, this makes your body an ecosystem, rich in resources and warmth and space. A perfect place to move into and have a family. While some of these guests are welcome, most are not. Your immune system is the guardian of this planet, the force tasked with protecting yourself against the constant danger of invasion. Unfortunately, your enemies in the tiny world have a huge advantage. Consider the effort it takes to make a single copy of yourself and your trillions of cells. First, you need to find someone who thinks you're cute, date and be awkward, and if things work out in a complicated dance, 2 of your cells merge together. Then you need to wait for months while the cell multiplies over and over until it's released into the world as a human being. And even then, you only have a mini copy that needs years to become remotely useful. A bacterium consists of 1 cell. It can make a fully grown copy in about half an hour. A virus can turn into hundreds within hours and billions within days. Your enemies multiply orders of magnitude faster than you. Even worse, for a bacterium or virus, your body is a hostile ecosystem applying selective pressure. Because they go through so many generations so quickly, eventually, by pure chance, there will be an individual that mutates and adapts in just the right way to resist your defenses and then multiply quickly again. In other words, you're facing a sheer endless variety of different enemies, and you're too slow to keep up with their evolution. This is bad. Luckily, your immune system is just about the most amazing thing ever. The second most complex biological system known to us after the human brain, and so sophisticated that we still haven't discovered all its secrets. Since it's so complicated, we have to simplify and focus on one thing at a time. If you want the full story, wait for the announcement at the end of the video. Okay, so why are we not all killed by some new bacteria or virus? In a nutshell, you actually have 2 immune systems, the innate and the adaptive immune system. The innate immune system was ready when you were born. It mostly consists of general-purpose soldiers. We introduced them in the last immune video. The adaptive immune system carries 2 types of cells, T cells and B cells, that are your superweapons and are incredibly effective and deadly for your enemies. These cells are complicated to produce and take a lot of time to deploy, but once they're ready, they pack a real punch. What makes your adaptive immune system so powerful is that it has the largest library in the universe. It has an answer to everything. You have at least one of these super weapon cells inside you to fight the Black Death, the coronavirus, and the first deadly bacteria that will emerge in a city on Mars in 100 years. This makes it possible for you to counter the ability of bacteria and viruses to change so rapidly. How is this possible? To understand what's going on here, we need to take one step back. All organisms on Earth are made from the same basic parts, mostly proteins. Proteins are the building blocks of life and can have billions of different shapes. You can imagine them as 3D puzzle pieces. There are billions of different puzzle pieces your enemies can use to construct their bodies. Why is this important? Because proteins are, in a way, the language of the micro-world. Cells don't have eyes or ears, so to tell friend from foe, they have to touch them and recognize if their protein is part of a friend or part of an enemy. Recognizing means that cells have countless tiny devices called receptors that are able to connect with a specific protein puzzle piece. So your cells have tiny puzzle pieces on their outsides that are able to click together or recognize other protein puzzle pieces. When a cell connects together with a protein and recognizes it as enemy, it knows that it has to attack. Only if your cells can make this distinction between friend or foe is your immune system able to fight an invader. But since there are billions of possible protein puzzle pieces, this means there are billions of possible enemy puzzle pieces. This is also one of the reasons we still have to deal with diseases like the flu each year. The influenza virus mutates very rapidly, and so the proteins that make up its hull constantly change a tiny bit. The soldiers of your innate immune system have a large number of the puzzle pieces for common bacteria and viruses memorized. That's why they are your all-purpose weapons. But they are ineffective against many billions of mutations and adaptations that your enemies can develop. So the reason you are still alive is that your adaptive immune system is able to recognize between 1 billion and 10 billion different enemy protein puzzle pieces, which is enough to be prepared for every possible enemy. But how is this possible? How could your immune system possibly have this much of a variety to be prepared for every possible protein puzzle piece? Well, the cells of your adaptive immune system found a cheat code, mixing and matching their own genetic code to create this stunning variety of receptors. The details are way too complicated for this video, but in a nutshell, your adaptive immune cells have official permission to take a tiny part of their own genetic code and mix it in random ways to create billions of different receptors. A good way to explain this is by asking you to imagine an army of cooks, with each of them wanting their own special recipe. They have 100 different ingredients to choose from. Each ingredient stands for one tiny piece of genetic code in this metaphor. So each cook takes a few random ingredients and randomly mixes them together. Maybe tomato, chicken, rice and half an onion as entree, marshmallow, pepper, strawberries and a quarter banana as a dessert. Or cucumber, beef, potatoes and 2 carrots, and blueberries, chocolate and cream with a pinch of cinnamon. Even with slight variation and with only 100 ingredients, there are billions of possible recipes. And likewise, with just a small selection of gene fragments, your cells create billions of receptors. The details of this are so cool that they should get their own video, or their own chapter in a book. In any case, by mixing up gene fragments, you get up to 10 billion different combinations. So in the end, you get billions of immune cells, and each of them has one specific and unique receptor, the dish from our metaphor, that is able to recognize one specific protein puzzle piece. In total, you end up with at least one cell for every enemy that could possibly exist. But here we run into a pretty dangerous problem. If your adaptive immune system is making weapons that can attack every possible protein puzzle piece in the universe, wouldn't it also make some that can attack your own cells? Yes, it happens all the time. This is so fundamentally dangerous to your survival that you have a whole organ that does nothing but work on preventing this. The murder university of your thymus. Your thymus is a chicken wing-sized organ above your heart, and you've probably never heard of it. Interestingly, your thymus is one of the reasons why your immune system weakens as you age, because it's in a constant state of decline once you reach puberty. But what does the thymus do? In your murder university, your immune system is putting your adaptive immune cells through an intense and deadly curriculum. Basically, it's showing them all sorts of protein puzzle pieces that are used by your own cells to see how they react. When a young cell recognizes a body puzzle piece and wants to attack it, the teacher's cells order them to kill themselves, and they are eaten up and recycled. The immune system is so particular about this process that around 98% of your adaptive immune cells that enter murder university die there. 2% graduate and get to do their job of protecting you for real. If this process goes wrong and cells escape that can recognize your own protein puzzle pieces, this can lead to autoimmune disease, where your immune system attacks your own body from the inside. And this, again, is another story for another time. Okay, let's summarize. Your immune system has two parts, one that defends you right after birth and one that carries the largest library of superweapons in the universe but needs to boot up first. To create billions of different superweapons, your adaptive immune cells recombine a part of their genetic code to create a breathtaking variety of attack weapons. Then they enter a murder university that only 2% survive to make sure they don't attack you. And then you end up with billions of different cells that in total are able to protect you against every possible enemy in the universe. Now, wait a second. If this is all true, why do we get sick at all? Why was a new disease like COVID-19 able to kill millions of people? Well, everything we've just learned about is a tiny window into the amazing struggle for life and death that plays out every day inside your body, and there are so many amazing details and questions here. How does your body actually find the right cell in time to protect you? How do your enemies fight back and overcome your immune system anyway? And what about all the things that didn't fit in this video? Neutron stars are one of the most extreme things in the universe. They're like giant atom cores, kilometers in diameter, unbelievably dense and violent. But how can something like this even exist? The life of a star is dominated by two forces being in balance: its own gravity and the radiation pressure of its fusion reaction. In the core of stars, hydrogen is fused into helium. Eventually, the hydrogen in the core is exhausted. If the star is massive enough, helium is now fused into carbon. The cores of these massive stars become layered like onions as heavier and heavier atomic nuclei build up at the center. Carbon is fused into neon, which leads to oxygen, which leads to silicon. Eventually, the fusion reaction hits iron, which cannot fuse into another element. When the fusion stops, the radiation pressure drops rapidly. The star is no longer in balance, and if its core mass exceeds about 1.4 solar masses, a catastrophic collapse takes place. The outer part of the core reaches velocities of up to 70,000 kilometers a second as it collapses towards the center of the star. Now, only the fundamental forces inside an atom are left to fight the gravitational collapse. The quantum mechanical repulsion of electrons is overcome, and electrons and protons fuse into neutrons packed as densely as an atomic nucleus. The outer layers of the star are catapulted into space in a violent supernova explosion. So, now we have a neutron star. Its mass is between 1 and 3 suns, but compressed to an object about 25 kilometers wide, and 500,000 times the mass of Earth in this tiny ball that's roughly the diameter of Manhattan. It's so dense that 1 cubic centimeter of neutron star contains the same mass as an iron cube 700 meters across. That's roughly 1 billion tons, as massive as Mount Everest, in a space the size of a sugar cube. Neutron star gravity is pretty impressive too. If you were to drop an object from 1 meter over the surface, it would hit the star in 1 microsecond and accelerate up to 7.2 million kilometers per hour. The surface is super flat, with irregularities of 5 millimeters maximum, with a super thin atmosphere of hot plasma. The surface temperature is about 1 million Kelvin compared to 5,800 Kelvin for our Sun. Let's look inside the neutron star. The crust is extremely hard and is most likely made of an iron atom nuclei lattice with a sea of electrons flowing through them. The closer we get to the core, the more neutrons and fewer protons we see until there's just an incredibly dense soup of indistinguishable neutrons. The cores of neutron stars are very, very weird. We're not sure what their properties are, but our closest guess is superfluid neutron degenerate matter or some kind of ultra-dense quark matter called quark-gluon plasma that doesn't make any sense in the traditional way and can only exist in such an ultra-extreme environment. In many ways, a neutron star is similar to a giant atom core. The most important difference is that atom cores are held together by strong interaction and neutron stars by gravity. As if all this wasn't extreme enough, let's take a look at a few other properties. Neutron stars spin very, very fast, young ones several times per second. And if there's a poor star nearby to feed the neutron star, it can rotate up to several hundred times per second. Like the object PSR J1748-2446 AD. It spins at approximately 252 million kilometers per hour. This is so fast that the star has a rather strange shape. We call these objects pulsars because they emit a strong radio signal. And the magnetic field of a neutron star is roughly 1 trillion times stronger than the magnetic field of Earth, so strong that atoms get bent when they enter its influence. Okay, I think we got the point across. Neutron stars are some of the most extreme, but also some of the coolest objects in the universe. Hopefully, we'll one day send spaceships to learn more about them and take some neat pictures. But we shouldn't get too close. Kurzgesagt is lying to you in every video, even in this one, because our videos distill very complex subjects into flashy 10-minute pieces, and unfortunately, reality is, well, complicated. The question of how we deal with that is central to what we do on this channel and something we think about a lot. What we mean by lying is the concept of lies to children. The idea that on the path to explaining something complicated, you start off with a little lie, a useful oversimplification that makes it easier to grasp a concept. For example, as a kid you learn that the Earth is a sphere orbiting the Sun with planet buddies. But it's not actually a sphere, and the buddies are super different in size and not close to each other at all. By beginning at a place of oversimplification, you're building a framework, a foundation that you can then build upon and add nuance and complexity later on. Step by step, you're getting towards the real gist of the complicated subject. Science communication has to use lies to children to some degree, or it turns into science education. And getting a proper education in all of the scientific fields would take years of intense study to become fluent in them. As a species, we have a major interest in summarizing science and its advancements and educating as many people about it as possible because we all benefit if more people have a fact-based scientific worldview. We will discuss what science is and how it works in different videos in more detail, but for now, let's just say it's a process to advance, organize, predict, and test our knowledge about the universe. If you understand the current state of scientific knowledge, then you can make better decisions based on facts and testable ideas rather than outdated belief systems or our intuition that evolved to protect our ancestors from lions, but is no longer suited for the complexity of our modern world. Our brains are comically ill-prepared to navigate the fast-moving world we happen to live in today, a world ironically created by science. A few hundred years ago, it was possible to be knowledgeable at an expert level in pretty much every field of study. In the information age, this is a futile endeavor since knowledge and data are increasing exponentially. So to even have a chance of grasping the world we live in, we need summaries that give us, if not a true understanding of all the details, a solid overview. Explaining science to many people is not about enlightening the ignorant, but necessary for the progress of our species at large. To make this possible, we need to find metaphors and stories that capture the true nature of things as much as possible, while using a language that our brains can deal with. A great example here is physics. Quarks are often depicted as blue, red, and green with different spins. But just saying spin and using colors forces our brain to imagine colorful spinning balls, which is great to visualize the different types and the relationships between quarks, but also creates a very wrong image of reality in our heads. Molecules are nothing like the neat diagrams that we're taught in school, but buzzing and vibrating entities held together by something we call charge that describes how certain things want to be close or escape each other for some unknown reason. We're describing phenomena that we are pretty sure exist in some form or another because the maths works out and we can do real-world experiments and predict their results before we do them. In reality, these are models, tricks to summarize what we know, make up a coherent story, and prepare the ground for more in-depth explanations. Don't confuse the description of a thing for the thing itself. Simplifications like these are not just meant to dumb things down, they're actually useful for experts themselves. For example, chemists who use wrong electron shell models to work out chemical bonds, or scientists using simplified models as the basis for discussion with colleagues across different scientific fields. But the simplification of science can also be problematic for a bunch of reasons. Finding the true nature of reality is super hard because our brains did not evolve for this job, and the universe doesn't care if we understand it. Science is a process to work towards gaining knowledge and not an absolute truth generator. The answers it provides are multi-layered and nuanced, and that complexity can get lost when it's simplified, especially when it's done so for headlines. An interesting cancer study turns into a potential cure, a healthy food becomes the basis for a new diet. Such simplifications give a misleading definiteness to science, which goes against its process-like nature. When cures don't materialize and diets don't turn out to be magical, we lose confidence in science and start to think of all science communication as misleading. Then there's the opposite effect. If a simplification is too engaging, if the story it tells is too good, it can distort the true complexity of a subject and give you a false sense of security and an illusion of deep knowledge. A gut feeling that you understand the science better than you actually do, which can lead people to ignore actual experts over their dangerous superficial knowledge and gut feeling. And this can have negative consequences for all of us because in the worst case, overconfidence in your own understanding of science can lead to bad decisions made with confidence. Just think of the surge of people that confidently disavow vaccines or climate change without truly understanding the subject matter. So considering all of this and the fact that we at Kurzgesagt reach millions of people with our videos, how do we handle this? Well, it has been a journey, especially the research. When we started, we just read articles, then moved on to books, peer-reviewed papers, then to conversations with experts. We began to collect our sources. With every step, we realized that we were still not doing enough. Nowadays, we try to read as many primary sources as possible, talk to multiple experts, and document our simplifications and give further reading in our sources doc. But this doesn't make our process flawless. What do you do if experts disagree with each other? What do you do if you find an amazing fact that perfectly fits a narrative but just can't find its primary source? How do you deal with the reality that many scientific results have huge error bars or maybes attached to them? How do you handle complex systems that defy easy answers? In the end, we make 10-minute videos, so we need to make decisions about what details and explanations can fit, which aspects need to be simplified, and which parts to cut. There is no single best answer for how to do this, and so we weigh the different options every single time. It can be painful for experts to see their field simplified. Some are happy with us, while others don't like it. This is fair, but also impossible to avoid. We're still trying to improve and want to be transparent about what we're trying to do. For example, we're taking part in the Megaproject about science communication to learn more. All of this brings us to the purpose of our videos. The most important thing we want to do with this channel is to inspire you and spark your curiosity for science and the amazing universe we live in. Learning often doesn't feel like fun, but with the right story, it is one of the best things, and we hope to provide that to you. Ultimately, we hope that we light a fire in you that motivates you to read books, pay more attention at school or university, and just get interested in a scientific field or two and learn more on your own. Not because you have to, but because you want to know more about how the world really works. Because the universe is beautiful and science is a way of seeing this beauty more clearly. And we hope that knowing that we have to simplify a bit does not make you enjoy our videos less. We are trying to build something with Kurzgesagt, and while we're not 100% sure yet what exactly, hopefully something that gets people to think about their own life and the context they exist in today, as well as the far future and the potential we all have as a species. And of course, how big things are, and what happens when we blow stuff up, because it's fun. Thanks for watching and sharing and supporting us. We really can't do this without you. Over 40 years ago, US President Richard Nixon declared drug abuse public enemy number one, starting an unprecedented global campaign, the War on Drugs. Today, the numbers are in. The war on drugs is a huge failure with devastating unintended consequences. It led to mass incarceration in the US, to corruption, political destabilization and violence in Latin America, Asia and Africa, to systemic human rights abuses across the world. It negatively affected the lives of millions of people. All of this while we waste billions of dollars every year only to create and fuel powerful drug cartels, while the goal of the war on drugs seems less achievable than ever: a world without drugs. How could this happen? The core strategy of the war on drugs is no drugs, no problems. So almost all of the efforts in the last few decades have been focused on eradicating the supply of drugs and incarcerating drug traffickers. But this ignores the most fundamental of market forces, supply and demand. If you reduce the supply of anything without reducing the demand first, its price goes up. This might lower sales for many products, but not for drugs. The drugs market is not price sensitive. Drugs will be consumed no matter what they cost. So the effect is to encourage production of more drugs and recruitment of more traffickers, which increases availability. This is also known as the balloon effect. Even if drug production or a major supply route is destroyed, the supply for the end user is not reduced. A perfect example of this is crystal meth. The US government tried to stop its production by strictly regulating the sale of chemicals used to manufacture the drug. This forced big meth producers out of business, but the unintended consequences were that thousands of small-scale operations started all over the country, mostly in small towns and rural communities, using chemicals that weren't regulated. In response to this, some US states wanted to reduce the supply of homegrown meth by regulating even more chemicals, which reduced small-scale meth production drastically. But the supply of meth still stayed the same. Mexican drug cartels immediately took over and opened big production operations. Their meth was even better than it was before, and they had loads of experience in smuggling. So all these efforts made meth production more professional, the drug more potent, while supply wasn't reduced at all. You can't win this war on the supply side. Not only are drugs widely available, demand unbroken, and some drugs purer than in the past, with a budget of around $30 billion, the US Drug Enforcement Agency has an efficiency rate of less than 1% when it comes to stopping the flow of drugs into the US and inside the US. For many minors around the world, it's as easy to get illegal drugs as alcohol. But it doesn't stop here. Prohibition may prevent a certain amount of people from taking drugs, but in the process, it causes huge damage to society as a whole. Many of the problems we associate with drug use are actually caused by the war against them. For example, prohibition makes drugs stronger. The more potent drugs you can store in as little space as possible, the more profit you'll make. It was the same during alcohol prohibition, which led to an increased consumption of strong liquor over beer. The prohibition of drugs also led to more violence and murders around the world. Gangs and cartels have no access to the legal system to settle disputes, so they use violence. This led to an ever-increasing spiral of brutality. According to some estimates, the homicide rate in the US is 25 to 75% higher because of the war on drugs. And in Mexico, a country on the front line, an estimated 164,000 have been murdered between 2007 and 2014. More people than in the war zones of Afghanistan and Iraq in the same period combined. But where the war on drugs might do the most damage to society is the incarceration of non-violent drug offenders. For example, the United States, one of the driving forces of the war on drugs, has 5% of the world's total population, but 25% of the world's prison population, largely due to the harsh punishments and mandatory minimums. Minorities suffer because of this especially. African Americans make up 40% of all US prison inmates. And while white kids are more likely to abuse drugs, black kids are 10 times more likely to get arrested for drug offenses. Okay, but is there actually something different we could do? Is there a way out of this mess? In the 1980s, Switzerland experienced a public health crisis related to heroin use. HIV rates skyrocketed and street crime became a problem. Swiss authorities tried a new strategy: harm reduction. They opened free heroin maintenance centers where addicts would be treated and stabilized. Here, people would be given free heroin of high quality, they would get clean needles and have access to safe injection rooms, showers, beds and medical supervision. Social workers helped them find housing and deal with other problems in their lives. The results were a sharp drop in drug-related crime, and 2/3 of the people in the centers got regular jobs because now they could focus on getting better instead of financing their addiction. Today, over 70% of all heroin addicts in Switzerland receive treatment. HIV infections have dropped drastically. Deaths from heroin overdoses have dropped by 50%. And drug-related street sex work and crime has been reduced enormously. So there are methods that are not only way cheaper, but also actually work instead of creating more problems. Drug prohibition led to a system that bulldozes human rights, costs vast sums of money, and creates a lot of human misery, all in pursuit of an unobtainable goal. After 40 years of fighting, it's time to finally end the war on drugs and move on to something better. Humans dream about leaving Earth and traveling through the galaxy, but we were born too early to be part of it. Or were we? The reality is, we could begin our dream by building a moon base today. We actually do have the technology, and current estimates from NASA and the private sector say it could be done for $20 to $40 billion spread out over about a decade. The price is comparable to the International Space Station or the budget surplus of Germany in 2017. Not that big an investment, really. The payoff would be immeasurable. The moon is a sandbox to develop new technologies and exploit unlimited resources. It would start a new space race and lay the foundation for us to spread out into the solar system and beyond. It would create a vast array of new technologies to benefit us on Earth, and we would all be part of it. So why aren't we doing it? Well, sadly, it's hard to get governments interested in long-term investments in the future of humanity. Let's imagine just doing it. If we start today, how would we build a moon base? Throughout history, colonization happened in phases. In the first phase of the age of exploration of the New World, for example, European monarchs funded expeditions to chart and discover and to stake their claims. They planted a flag and set up a camp, but they didn't stay. In the second phase, small missions set up outposts and settlements were founded, which were still very dependent on their home countries for supplies. Some failed, but others survived and established a permanent presence. Only then, in the third phase, did a true colony form to which tradesmen and laborers could emigrate, creating new wealth and opportunities for themselves and their families, sending extreme wealth back to their countries of origin. When we colonize the moon, we'll go through the same three phases, this time without murdering millions of innocent people in the process. The moon is not a welcoming place for living things. A moon day lasts 29 Earth days, with a difference of nearly 300 degrees Celsius between sunlight and shade. There's no atmosphere to shield us from meteorites, big and small, or cosmic radiation. Worse still, the lunar surface is covered in a layer of nasty, jagged dust. The moon is hard, but we're good at doing hard things. In the first phase of lunar colonization, our explorers proved it can be done, that a new world can be reached. This phase started 60 years ago with the Apollo missions. Since then, satellites like the American Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter have mapped the moon, while rovers like the Chinese U2 have studied the composition of the lunar surface, looking for water ice and metals. Phase 1 is more or less complete. We know what we need to know to enter Phase 2. In the second phase, astronauts will build the first moon base, and this could begin today. The first small moon base could be completed in a decade. The First Nation that establishes this base will be akin to the First Nations building outposts in the New World 500 years ago. It's expensive to send rockets to the moon, so we will send as little as possible. The base will be light, little more than inflatable habitats for crews of no more than 12, and will be deployed somewhere with natural shelter. Options include caves, like underground lava tube tunnels or craters near the poles where the days are 6 months long. These astronauts will not stay long. The habitat is likely to be abandoned between missions, as solar panels cannot generate electricity during the lunar night. But they'll do the groundwork to enable humans to stay permanently. Our first crew will consist of scientists and engineers who will study the composition of the moon and whose experiments will explore ways of using the available lunar material, say purifying lunar ice and turning it into water for human use. And water is important for far more than drinking. They can use it to experiment with growing plants for food. Hydrogen fuel cells will store power through the long night, extending astronaut stays. And most importantly, it can be split into hydrogen and oxygen, rocket fuel. By harvesting water from the moon and putting it into orbit, the moon base will supply an orbital depot where scientific missions to Mars and the outer solar system can refuel. Compared to the Earth, it's much easier and cheaper to get things off the moon into orbit. Colonizing Mars may mean starting from the moon. But this isn't a true colony, not yet. The base will be abandoned if funding stops. If we want our base to grow into the third phase, into a true colony, it must become self-sufficient, supporting itself via exports to Earth. Now, private contractors arrive, looking to get rich off lunar resources and support services. If it's cheaper to produce rocket fuel in space, what else can they get rich on? They could extract precious metals, abundant in impact craters, and other raw materials from the lunar regolith. One promising possibility is the mining of helium-3, an isotope that could one day be used in nuclear fusion reactors, something the Chinese lunar exploration program is currently looking into. Future colonists may export helium-3 back to Earth, providing us with cheap and clean fusion energy. Asteroids could be pulled into the moon's orbit and mined. With commercial exports to Earth, the colony is fully in its third phase, self-sufficient and economically productive. Our base will begin using lunar material in its construction projects if it's to continue growing. Fortunately, lunar soil has all the necessary ingredients to make concrete. Robotic mining rigs can sift the lunar dust for organic molecules and could be used to build huge structures way too massive to be brought from Earth, while advances in 3D printing will make it possible to produce almost everything else the crews need. It's hard to say when exactly the colony becomes self-sustaining. Growth is gradual, experiments are replaced by industry, and the population steadily reaches the hundreds, encompassing more than just scientists. Engineers, pilots, and contractors representing countries and corporations will be present. Two of these people will make a breakthrough, not scientific, but social. They will have the first extraterrestrial child. Throughout history, the birth of the first child was celebrated as a moment where the seed of a colony finally and irreversibly took root. Here, it means that the moon is not just a place for scientists and engineers to work, it's a place for people to live, to raise a family. Once this transition happens, the colony grows rapidly, building more habitats and schools and farms and all the things needed to support the growing population. As our colony grows, all kinds of new technologies will be invented to sustain it. They might develop crops that efficiently recycle carbon dioxide or that grow with very little water. They might find ways to recycle and reuse 100% of their waste, technologies that are extremely valuable for Earth. They could even build the first space elevator in the solar system. With a space elevator, spacecraft, astronauts, and raw materials could be brought back and forth from lunar orbit without needing to use rockets at all. The moon may become a hub for economic activity on a scale that's hard to imagine right now. It's hard to say who will own the colony at this point. Will the first person born on the moon take the national identity of their parents, or will a new generation meld together into a new lunar society? And when existing treaties that bar any nation from owning the moon are inevitably rewritten, will the colonists be given a say? Will they declare independence from the Earth? However it happens, the moon is a perfect sandbox to learn how to colonize the solar system, the perfect project to unify nations, and the only way to guarantee our survival as a species should something tragic happen on Earth. If we ever want to colonize the Milky Way, we'll have to start somewhere. So why not start there? Why not start now? Violence and war. The insane brutality of ISIS continues. The Russians are invading Ukraine, and the Palestinians and Israelis continue to slug it out. Does that make you feel gloomy? Well, don't, because if you look at the numbers, war actually seems to be going out of fashion, while the global population is at an all-time high. It seems that we live in the most peaceful period in human history. How is this possible? As of September 2014, there were 4 conflicts going on in the world that had caused at least 10,000 people to die since January 2013, 9 conflicts that killed more than 1,000 people, and 13 that killed more than 100 since January 2013. Not really peaceful, but consider this. Of all the conflicts going on, none is an active war between countries. They are either civil wars or local conflicts. Although civil wars are terrible and cause huge suffering, their impact is usually way smaller than a war between nations or empires. When 2 nations engage in war, they can mobilize much bigger forces, have access to all of the state's resources and logistics, and almost to all of the population. So why have we transitioned from wars between nation-states to civil wars? A lot of it is to do with colonialism and the Cold War. When the Cold War ended, a major driver of armed conflict vanished too. But the breakup of the communist dictatorships revealed new or old tensions and brought new conflicts in the now freed states, which often resulted in civil war. Much more importantly, in 1945, nearly all of Africa, much of Asia, and parts of Latin America were under colonial rule. By 1990, all but a few islands were independent. But wait, couldn't you argue that what today's multinational corporations are doing in the Third World is just as bad as colonialism? Let's look at Congo. It was established as a colony in 1885 by the Belgian king, an area 80 times the size of Belgium. Violence committed against the indigenous Congolese and the ruthless system of economic exploitation had killed about half of the population by 1908. About 10 million Congolese were executed or starved to death. Millions were mutilated and traumatized. The economic exploitation of the Congo remained the top priority, and forced labor never really ceased completely until the end of Belgian rule in 1960, which is not really that long ago. So no, colonialism was much worse than vulture capitalism is today, and it ended just 2 generations ago. Most of the conflicts that are going on right now are in areas that 60 years ago were under foreign control. But things are getting better. Until 1989, victory for one side in a civil war was common, while nowadays, victories are much rarer. At the same time, negotiated endings have jumped from 10% to almost 40%. What about the rest of the world? Why have nation-states stopped attacking each other? There are 4 major reasons. 1. Democratization. The steady development from autocracy to democracy. Democracies hardly ever fight each other. Of all the state-against-state wars fought since 1900, only a minority were fought between democracies. 2. Globalization. War is just not as effective at achieving economic goals as it used to be. Today, it's almost always cheaper to buy resources on the global market than to seize them by force. People from other nations are more valuable to us alive than dead, which overall is a pretty new concept. 3. War is so 20th century. Until World War I, warfare was seen as an inevitable part of the human experience and as a valuable tool which you could use to achieve goals when diplomacy hit a brick wall. Today we have rules that declare acts of aggression illegal and stipulate that armed force is only justified in self-defense or with the authority of the UN Security Council. These rules are still broken, but today it's harder to do so without sparking opposition and disapproval. Also, we have an international court for war crimes in The Hague, and that's a very recent innovation. 4. Borders are mostly fixed now. After World War II, territorial wars generally stopped when most countries pledged to accept international borders and respect other nations' autonomy. But is all of this just an anomaly, or are we on the road to lasting peace? Truth is, we don't know yet. We need a big enough sample to rule out the historical average, which is about 1 or 2 big wars per century. We just haven't had enough time since World War II to rule out the possibility that war is not going away. If we don't have one major war in the next 75 years, we can be really confident that humanity is changing. So, you see, war might be over. Yes, there are nasty conflicts going on in many places, but overall, things are getting better, and we can make them even better by speaking up for peace and democracy. Every second of your life, you are under attack. Billions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi are trying to make you their home. So our bodies have developed a super complex little army with guards, soldiers, intelligence, weapons factories, and communicators to protect you from, well, dying. For this video, let's assume the immune system has 12 different jobs. For example, kill enemies, communicate, etc. And it has 21 different cells and 2 protein forces. These cells have up to 4 different jobs. Let's assign them. Here are the interactions. Now, let's make this understandable. First of all, let's add colors to the jobs. Now, let's illustrate the cells. The central color represents the main job of the cell, while the surrounding ones represent secondary duties. Now the immune system looks like this. Now the interactions. Isn't this complexity just awesome? For this video, we will only talk about these cells and ignore the rest. So what happens in the case of an infection? It's a beautiful day when suddenly a wild rusty nail appears and you cut yourself. The first barrier of the immune system is breached, your skin. Nearby bacteria seize on the opportunity and enter your wound. They start using up the body's resources and double their numbers about every 20 minutes. At first, they fly under the radar, but when a certain bacteria population is reached, they change their behavior and start to damage the body by changing the environment around them. The immune system has to stop them as fast as possible. First of all, your guard cells, known as macrophages, intervene. They are huge cells that guard every border region of the body. Most of the time, they alone can suffocate an attack because they can devour up to 100 intruders each. They swallow the intruder whole and trap it inside a membrane. Then the enemy gets broken down by enzymes and is killed. On top of that, they cause inflammation by ordering the blood vessels to release water into the battlefield so fighting becomes easier. You notice this as a very mild swelling. When the macrophages fight for too long, they call in heavy backup by releasing messenger proteins that communicate location and urgency. Neutrophils leave their patrol routes in the blood and move to the battlefield. The neutrophils fight so furiously that they kill healthy cells in the process. On top of that, they generate barriers that trap and kill the bacteria. They are indeed so deadly that they evolved to commit suicide after 5 days to prevent them from causing too much damage. If this is not enough to stop the invasion, the brain of the immune system kicks in. The dendritic cell gets active. It reacts to the signals of the soldiers and starts collecting samples from the enemies. They rip them into pieces and present the parts on their outer layer. Now, the dendritic cell makes a crucial decision. Should they call for antivirus forces that eradicate infected body cells or an army of bacteria killers? In this case, antibacteria forces are necessary. It then travels to the closest lymph node in about a day. Here, billions of helper and killer T cells are waiting to be activated. When T cells are born, they go through a difficult and complicated training process, and only a quarter survives. The surviving cells are equipped with a specific setup. And the dendritic cell is on its way looking for a helper T cell with a setup that's just right. It's looking for a helper T cell that can bind to the parts of the intruders which the dendritic cell has presented on its membrane. When it finally finds one, a chain reaction takes place. The helper T cell is activated. It quickly duplicates thousands of times. Some become memory T cells that stay in the lymph node and will make you practically immune against this enemy. Some travel to the field of battle to help out, and the third group goes on to travel to the center of the lymph node to activate a very powerful weapons factory. Like the T cells, they're born with a specific setup, and when a B cell and a T cell with the same setup meet, hell breaks loose. The B cell duplicates rapidly and starts producing millions of little weapons. They work so hard that they would literally die from exhaustion very fast. Here, helper T cells play another important role. They stimulate the hard-working factories and tell them, "Don't die yet, we still need you. Keep going." This also ensures that the factories die if the infection is over, so the body doesn't waste energy or hurt itself. But what is produced by the B cells? You've heard of them, of course, antibodies. Little proteins that are engineered to bind to the surface of the specific intruder. There are even different kinds of antibodies that have slightly different jobs. The helper T cells tell the plasma cells which type is needed the most in this particular invasion. Millions of them flood the blood and saturate the body. Meanwhile, at the site of infection, the situation is getting dire. The intruders have multiplied in number and start hurting the body. Guard and attack cells fight hard, but also die in the process. Helper T cells support them by ordering them to be more aggressive and to stay alive longer. But without help, they can't overwhelm the bacteria. But now the second line of defense arrives. Billions of antibodies flood the battlefield and disable lots of the intruders, rendering them helpless or killing them in the process. They also stun the bacteria and make them an easy target. Their back is built to connect to killer cells, so they can connect and kill the enemy more easily. Macrophages are especially good at gnoming up the bacteria which antibodies have attached to. Now, the balance shifts. In a team effort, the infection is wiped out. At this point, millions of body cells have already died. No big deal, the losses are quickly replenished. Most immune cells are now useless, and without the constant signals, they commit suicide, so as not to waste any resources. But some stay behind, the memory cells. If this enemy is encountered ever again in the future, they will be ready for it and probably kill it before you even notice. This was a very simplified explanation of parts of the immune system at work. Can you imagine how complex this system is? Even at this level, when we ignore so many players and all the chemistry. Life is awfully complicated, but if we take the time to understand it, we always encounter endless wonders and great beauty. This bird has magical powers. Let's see a demonstration. Bring in the latest scientific research. Wow, that's a lot of complicated stuff about the immune system and all its cells. How could someone possibly understand all of this? Incredible! This overview is delightful and easy to grasp, but still scientifically accurate. Let's make it a bit more difficult. Can she make all of evolution visible at a glance? This is brilliant. You can clearly see the relationships between species and how they evolved. And look at those illustrations. These posters are ready to be shared with the world. These very special pieces of Kurzgesagt are now available on our shop along with many other sciencey products, all researched with care and created with love by the burbs with magical powers. Today, we're answering the stupidest, the best and most amazing questions from you, our viewers. At Kurzgesagt, we're experts when it comes to tackling stupid questions, and on top of our own, we get hundreds from you on an almost daily basis. So, let's very seriously and scientifically answer some of them. Question 1. How many jellyfish do you need to power Tokyo? Tokyo is a hungry beast, gobbling up around 280 terawatt-hours of electricity every year. That's more energy than these 20 countries combined and more than all of Australia. Can we power Tokyo with our innovative renewable energy source? Some jelly species like Aquaria victoria or crystal jelly contain fluorescent proteins and glow in the dark. If you put one of them in front of a tiny solar panel, you'd end up with something like a microwatt-hour of energy. To meet Tokyo's outrageous energy demands, you'd need a quintillion, 300 quadrillion glowing jellies. That's too many. Can we use bigger ones? How about Nemopilema nomurae, the Nomura jellyfish? Really chunky boys, weighing about as much as a piano and growing up to 2 meters wide, they're armed with around 1,000 spindly tentacles that grow up to 4 meters long and help them suck up plankton from the water. In recent years, their numbers have been exploding, wreaking havoc on local ecosystems. Using these fridge-sized jellies to power Tokyo will finally give them something more useful to do. They don't glow in the dark, but jellyfish are kind of electric, aren't they? Unfortunately, no. If you've ever been stung by a jellyfish, you know it feels like a painful electric jolt. But the pain actually comes from hundreds of nematocysts inside their tentacles, tiny dart guns filled with venom. So how do we get energy from jellyfish? We'll squeeze it out of them with the power of piezoelectricity. Piezoelectricity is an electric charge that builds up in certain solid materials like crystals or bone when you stress and squeeze them. For example, a quartz crystal is made up of positive and negatively charged atoms arranged in repeating pyramid shapes. Their charges usually cancel each other out. But if you apply enough pressure, atoms shift out of place and the pyramids become kind of wonky. Positively charged on one side and negatively charged on the other, like a battery. Together, they add up to a charge across the whole crystal. Piezoelectricity powers sonar, times quartz watches, and some nightclubs use it to keep the lights on just from the stamping of dancers' feet. So, here's the plan. We'll create a ginormous battery from jellyfish by harnessing the hypnotic movements of Nomura's hundreds of long, thin tentacles. First, we squeeze our jellyfish, one tentacle at a time, into a kind of wetsuit made from nylon 1111, a cutting-edge material that's been optimized for power production and has the same piezoelectric properties as quartz. Next, we watch as each twitch of a tentacle bends the tiny nylon nanofibers of the jelly suit, converting its movements into electricity. All we need to do now is to plug our jelly into a current collector with a copper cable to be utterly disappointed. Even with around 1,000 tentacles wrapped in energy-generating nylon, the electricity generated only adds up to around 1 watt or 10 kilowatt-hours per year. Enough energy to run your laptop for 20 days. Not bad, but we want to power Tokyo here. We need more jellies, way more, about 29 billion. Sounds like a lot, and it is, but right now there are 27 billion chickens alive on Earth, so it's mostly a matter of motivation on our part. A single Nomura can produce millions of jelly babies a month, and with enough plankton to eat, they can grow from the size of a grain of rice to the size of a person in less than a year. If we want to breed a lot of them and fast, all we need to do is basically empty the Pacific of plankton. And of course, we'll need space to store them all. Giving each Nomura a cube of space measuring 5 meters on each side sounds generous, but it barely contains the tentacles. All those jelly cubes add up to a tank that's about 7 times the total volume of Mount Fuji. With all those tentacles and cables, our biggest issue will be short circuits. We need to insulate all 29 billion cables. And don't forget the tentacles themselves. Now, even if the jellies get tangled up, we can maintain a steady power supply for the good people of Tokyo. In reality, of course, our jellyfish power station would be pretty difficult to maintain. Nomura would probably die constantly and need to be replaced, and the cost of building this whole mess and killing the ocean to feed them would be like spending $1 million to buy a single dollar bill. We're not saying any of this is a good idea, but now we've done the maths, there's nothing to stop you from giving it a try. Okay, bring on the next totally dumb, completely reasonable question. Question 2. What if it rained bananas instead of water for a whole day? Okay, so first we tried to calculate what would happen if for one day every single rain droplet was now a banana. Turns out, in a storm, several million raindrops can fall on a single square meter, which stacks quickly to the equivalent of a banana asteroid smashing into the planet and killing all life. While fun, this is a bit too much. Instead, let's take the average volume of rain that falls on our planet in a single day, about 1.33 trillion tons of water, a massive wobbly orb of water 14 kilometers across. Now, let's swap this water for bananas. Each fruit weighs about 120 grams, which will give us a daily banana fall of 11.1 quadrillion bananas, weighing 1.33 trillion tons in total. If we match average global rainfall patterns, even the Sahara Desert would receive around 15 trillion bananas. If a medium-sized banana has about 105 calories, 15 trillion Sahara bananas alone could already feed the world's population for over 2 months. For the world as a whole, the calories of all rain bananas add up to a grand total of 1.2 quintillion calories. With just 1 day of banana rain, we could go on feeding everyone on Earth for over 100 years. Of course, in reality, the banana rain would be pretty catastrophic. A banana falling from about 3,000 meters, the height of a mid-altitude rain cloud, would reach a velocity of 240 meters per second and strike the ground with the same kinetic energy you'd get from dropping a bowling ball off a 50-meter building. And we're dropping over 11 quadrillion of them across the planet. One of the rainiest and therefore worst affected cities is London. It would face a storm of 21 billion bananas, or 2.5 million tons. The shower of yellow death breaks roofs, shatters windows, and decimates national monuments. Human bones are no match for this monsoon, so we'd need to take shelter from a banana blitz inside or underground. All around the world, cities and infrastructure, rivers and rainforests are severely damaged and clotted with a layer of banana smoothie that's already beginning to rot. Trillions of mashed bananas are floating in the ocean, clogging up coastlines. Picture the aftermath of all the worst oil spills and superstorms combined, but way worse and kind of everywhere. And our problems are just getting started. The rotting banana mush contains 160 billion tons of methane, 280 times our current annual emissions as a planet. Methane traps around 28 times more heat than CO2. Adding this much greenhouse gas this quickly will lead to a catastrophic and sudden spike in global temperatures. Most ecosystems won't be able to handle it and will witness a devastating mass extinction event. In short, banana rain is an apocalypse-level catastrophe. Okay, hopefully your question has been properly answered. It's time to wrap up for today. Please keep sending us your amazing questions, even and especially if they're stupid. We're collecting them and we'll answer more of them in the future. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about measles. What does measles actually do, and should you vaccinate against it, or is this just hysteria? Measles is a virus, a hull of proteins, RNA, plus some more proteins for reproduction. It cannot reproduce by itself, it needs a host cell to do so. To understand measles, we have to understand the immune system. You might already have seen the visual system we developed to help here. Now, let's focus on the parts of the immune system relevant to measles. The measles virus enters humans through the nose, mouth, or eyes. The measles infection starts in the lungs. Measles is especially good at infecting the body's first line of defense, macrophages, powerful guard cells that protect the lungs from intruders. They enter a cell and take it over. The virus reprograms the cell and transforms it into a dangerous virus production center. Once a cell is filled with viruses, they leave the crippled cell and begin the cycle over again. But the immune system has powerful weapons against virus infections, natural killer cells. These cells basically patrol the body and check other cells for infections. If they find an infected cell, they order it to commit suicide. This is so effective that for the first 10 days or so, you will not even notice that you're infected with measles. And now, the reason why measles is so powerful. After a period of fighting and dying, macrophages alert the brain of the immune system, the dendritic cells. The job of the dendritic cells is to collect samples of intruders, travel to the lymph nodes, and then activate the heavy weapons that eradicate the infection very fast in a team effort. But the measles virus uses a dreadful tactic. It infects the dendritic cells and uses them as a Trojan horse to enter deeper into the body. The infected cells travel to the next lymph node to alert other immune cells. Once it arrives, the measles virus spreads around the virgin T and B cells and infects them. It attacks the very system that evolved to fight it. Now, things happen very fast. The lymph system spreads the virus everywhere and it enters the bloodstream, infecting cells while traveling. Measles infects organs like the spleen, the liver, the intestines, and most importantly, the lungs. The symptoms range from a very high fever, headache, sickness, bronchitis, and of course, a rash. In the lungs, the immune system was doing pretty okay, but now millions of viruses attack a second time and kill countless cells, wiping out the defense systems. In this phase, you start coughing out millions of measles viruses. Measles is so contagious at this stage that if you meet someone who isn't vaccinated, there's about a 90% chance you'll infect them. Without the protective army in the lungs, other bacteria or viruses that would usually not stand a chance can now enter the lungs and develop into harmful parallel infections that can cause pneumonia, the most common way to die from measles. Your body's immune system is now seriously wounded. Various protective systems are hurt and disrupted. The virus spreads everywhere, infecting the skin all over the body. The typical measles rash now becomes visible. And in some cases, the measles virus reaches the brain and causes a brain infection. If it does so, the chances of dying are between 20 to 40%, and there may be long-term damage. But your body is far from giving up at this stage, and it fights back aggressively. Some dendritic cells survive long enough to activate the antivirus forces of the body. Plasma cells in the lymph nodes start producing billions of antibodies, tiny proteins that mark infected cells for destruction or clump the virus together. Killer T cells flood the body and kill infected cells left and right. After 2 to 3 weeks, the body usually gets the upper hand and overwhelms the infection. But the immune system is now seriously weakened and may take weeks or months to recover, leaving the body vulnerable to other diseases. But if you make it, you are now immune. The immune system remembers the virus forever. Measles is no joke. Although 84% of all humans are vaccinated against measles, 122,000 people died because of the infection in 2014. Some people cannot get vaccinations, either because they're too young, because of chemotherapy or HIV, or because they're allergic to the vaccine. They need the rest of us to stop the disease for them. The measles vaccination is safe, cheap, and available. There are no benefits from having measles at all. You don't strengthen your immune system, and it's not more natural. Most people who don't vaccinate only want the best for their children, which is honorable. But if you ask yourself, am I putting the life of my child and other children at risk by not vaccinating against measles? The sad answer is yes. Yes, you are. Let's not play the blame game though. Let's work together and eradicate this virus. Together, we can get rid of these dreadful monsters and consign them to their rightful place, the history books. Human history is told by the energy we use. At first, we had to use our muscles, then we learned to control fire. We industrialized the world using coal and oil and entered the atomic age when we learned how to split a nucleus. At each step, we increased our energy harvest to a scale never seen before and advanced as a species. Currently, we're slowly transitioning to renewables, and if we're lucky, fusion energy will become viable in the future. As humanity progresses further, if we don't destroy ourselves or our habitat, we will likely gain complete control of our planet's resources. At that stage, we'll probably begin to look outwards for new places to expand into. But space is hard, and establishing a serious human presence in the solar system will require ungodly amounts of energy. Luckily, we know where to find it. The Sun, the ultimate source of energy. A furnace 100 quintillion times more powerful than our most efficient nuclear reactor. It shines with the energy of 1 trillion nuclear bombs per second. So how do we get this energy? Not some of it, all of it. If we want to collect the most energy physically possible, we'll have to build the largest, most ambitious structure in the universe, the Dyson sphere, a megastructure that encompasses a whole star to capture its power output. For an intelligent species, building a Dyson sphere is a technological leap on a par with the discovery of fire for our ancestors. The transition from a planetary species to an interstellar species. It would usher in an age of exploration and expansion on a scale we can barely imagine. So, what would it look like? A solid shell enveloping the Sun is probably not the way to go. A large rigid body like that would be vulnerable to impacts, possibly shattering. It would be liable to drift and could crash straight into the Sun. A more viable design for a Dyson sphere might be a Dyson swarm, an enormous set of orbiting panels that collect the Sun's power and beam it elsewhere. Such a swarm would give humanity basically unlimited energy. But building it won't be easy. The Sun is very big, so we need a lot of satellites. If each satellite is a square kilometer, we'd need around 30 quadrillion to surround the Sun. Even if they're built as lightly as possible, we need about 100 quintillion tons of material. And then we need the energy to actually put the parts together and deliver them to their positions around the Sun. On top of all that, we need to have a permanent infrastructure set up in space to start building. Let's assume for the purposes of this video that our descendants will take care of that and want to create the megastructure. We can sort the challenges into 3 main categories: materials, design, and energy. To get the vast amounts of raw materials required for our Dyson swarm, we'll have to largely disassemble a whole planet. Of the planets available, Mercury is the best candidate. It's the closest to the Sun and very metal-rich. Close to the Sun also means less moving stuff around, and Mercury has no atmosphere and only about a third of the surface gravity of Earth, making it comparatively easy to launch material into space. Next, we should consider the design of our swarm. Simpler is better. Conventional solar panels are far too intricate and short-lived. Our satellites need to operate without repairs or intervention for astronomically long times, and they need to be cheap to produce. They're most likely going to be enormous mirrors, which refocus sunlight to central collecting stations like in concentrated solar power on Earth. To build and launch them efficiently, they must be incredibly light, made of little more than polished metal foil bound to some supports. And last, we need the energy to build and launch the swarm itself. Taking apart a planet and launching things into space requires an enormous amount of energy. For example, if we used all the fossil fuels and uranium on Earth and we were perfectly efficient, we could only launch as much mass as Mount Everest into space. A rather meager accomplishment compared to planetary disassembly. To get the energy needed to build a Dyson sphere, it's almost as if you're going to need the power output of a Dyson sphere. But that's okay. There's plenty of sunlight to be had on Mercury, so let's get to work. Humans are expensive to keep alive and are very sensitive to the environment, so we'd want to automate as much as possible. Ideally, we'd have a small crew of controllers who oversee an army of autonomous machines doing the actual work. There are 4 major pieces of technology required: solar collectors, miners, refiners, and launch equipment. The solar collectors are going to give us the energy we need to disassemble the planet. To start, maybe we deploy something like 1 square kilometer of them, either as mirrors or as traditional solar panels. They'll provide the energy to run our miners, which strip mine the surface of the planet, and our refiners, which extract valuable elements and fabricate them into our swarm satellites. To get them into space, we need a creative and efficient solution. Rockets are too expensive and difficult to deorbit and reuse. Instead, we'll want to use a sort of railgun, a long electromagnetic track which launches our satellites at high speeds. Our swarm satellites would be packed tight for launch, unfurling like an enormous origami once in orbit. From this point, we can take advantage of exponential growth, using the energy of the existing parts of the swarm to build more infrastructure on Mercury and launch new panels faster and faster. Each panel provides the energy to build another. Those 2 work together to build the next 2. 4 become 8, 8 becomes 16, and so on. Within just about 60 doubling times, the Sun would be completely surrounded by solar panels. And this can happen quickly. If a square kilometer of solar collectors takes a month to build, we could be done in a decade, if only our infrastructure on the planet's surface can keep up with the quickly growing budget of energy. Even collecting 1% of the Sun's energy is an unbelievable change in our species' energy budget. We could create the infrastructure to beam basically unlimited amounts of energy around the solar system for all sorts of projects. Colonies on other worlds, terraforming planets, constructing more megastructures, or even traveling to other stars. It could be the start of an interstellar civilization. Based on physics alone, this is not just possible, but easy. It's such a simple process and such a necessary step for any species to expand beyond their home planet that many astronomers think there are probably Dyson spheres already out there in the Milky Way. We haven't spotted any yet, but they could be there. It's far from certain that humanity will ever get to this point. Our attention is too often focused on short-term political gains and conflicts that will not matter in the long run. But if we survive the challenges we've set ourselves, we could potentially become the first species in the universe to create a structure with the scope of a star. If we do it, the only limitation left will be our own imagination. Oh dear, just when you thought the Iraq problem was solved because you haven't heard about it for a while, everything's back to murderous chaos and terror. What happened? In 2003, the US invaded Iraq because of its alleged connections to terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. At the time, Saddam Hussein, a brutal dictator, ruled the country. He was part of the Sunni minority and suppressed the Shia majority. Iraq was conquered fairly quickly, but the US had no plan for the country. The until then suppressed Shia majority took over and began oppressing the Sunnis because suppressing other faiths has proven to be such a good idea. Unsurprisingly, a Sunni rebel uprising began and terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda trickled into Iraq, and local forces, often former Sunni military, began fighting the US troops and the newly formed Iraqi state, peaking in a bloody civil war in 2006. Since then, people in Iraq have basically been segregated by religion. So, in a tragic irony of history, the US invasion led to the formation of the very terrorists the US wanted to eliminate in the first place, because Iraq was now the perfect training ground for terrorism. To understand this complicated conflict better, we need to understand the relationship between the two main branches of the Muslim faith, Shia and Sunni Islam. Sunnis make up about 80% of the Muslim world and Shia about 20%. And the hardliners on both sides don't like each other very much. Saudi Arabia and Iran are the two most powerful players in the game of faiths. They both have no separation of state and religion, domestic problems, and a lot of oil money. And they support groups that fight the other religious orientation. And one of those terror organizations supported by Saudi Arabia was the Islamic State in Iraq, or ISI for short. In 2010, the Arab Spring happened and changed the whole situation in the Middle East. In Syria, dictator Bashar al-Assad didn't think much of resigning and started a gruesome civil war against his own people. The longer the war went on, the more foreign groups joined the fight, most of them for religious reasons and with the goal of building an Islamic State in the region. And one of them was the infamous ISI, which now became the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. They had fought in Iraq for years and had thousands of well-trained and fanatic soldiers. They already quasi-controlled parts of northern Iraq and were very determined to build their religious state. And they changed the game in Syria like no one expected. ISIS was so unbelievably violent and radical that soon it was at war with almost every other faction of the Syrian rebel armies. They attacked and killed members of other Muslim terrorist groups. In the territories they controlled, they built an Islamic State with rules so strict that even the hardliners of Al-Qaeda and Saudi Arabia were shocked and withdrew their support. ISIS has been accused of responsibility for multiple massacres against civilians, countless suicide bombings, the hostage-taking of women and children, the execution of their prisoners and beheadings. All kinds of medieval horrors we would rather not have to illustrate. And this lovely gathering of human beings recently decided it was time to take more territory in Iraq. Since the US left Iraq, the Shia Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has monopolized power and discriminated against Sunnis wherever possible. The government of Iraq is widely regarded as being corrupt, incapable, and it's certainly hated by a large part of its citizens. The Iraqi army, consisting of about 300,000 soldiers, was created using $25 billion in tax money, but it's not loyal to its government and has been withdrawing or completely disbanding, giving up city after city. Because ISIS has announced that everyone who opposes them will be killed, they have proven they mean business. By June 2014, they'd conquered a big chunk of Iraq, including Mosul, Iraq's second largest city. They'd stolen hundreds of millions from captured banks, making them the richest terror organization on earth. And they are constantly working on establishing a super medieval religious state. Iran and the US are even considering working together to fight them. That's how gruesome the situation is. Events in Iraq show again that exploiting the people you've defeated in a war, denying them power, a living and a stake in the rebuilding of the country, is just sowing the seeds of the next bout of violence. Somehow, we have to break this circle. There might be an object so indestructible, extreme and brutal that it could kill black holes. Gravastars. Cosmic soap bubbles filled with pure energy and with a shell made of the weirdest material that's possible in nature. What are they? What do they look like? And are they just a theoretical fever dream, or will they change our understanding of the universe forever? The birth of the most extreme objects in the universe. Very massive stars die in the most dramatic way possible, a supernova. We've explained this process in detail before, but in a nutshell, in less than a second, their cores collapse, crushed under their extreme gravity. The star's shell rushes in, bounces against the collapsing core, and explodes, shining brighter than whole galaxies. Depending on how massive the star was, there are two possible outcomes. Either the core compresses into a super-dense neutron star, or it kind of breaks reality and collapses into a singularity, an infinitely dense point with no size or dimensions at all. A place where the laws of the universe stop making sense and time and space are reversed. A black hole. Gravastars are a third, even weirder option. Instead of collapsing into an infinitely dense point, the core is kind of ground down, like a rock pulverized to dust by a cosmic hydraulic press. Atoms and particles are crushed so hard that they transform into pure energy. A sort of mini-universe, if you want. And just like our universe, this bubble violently wants to expand and grow. In a fraction of a second, the bubble smashes into the collapsing star around it. The unspeakable mass of the star collapsing under its own gravity meets the titanic violence of the expanding energy bubble. Like an ancient god hammering on its anvil, matter is trapped between an immovable object and an unstoppable force, forging a new kind of material that we've never seen before, but that we know is physically possible. And then it suddenly stops. A gravastar is born. What does it look like? Cosmic soap bubbles. Just like black holes, a gravastar can have any mass, but a typical one would be about the size of the London metropolitan area and as massive as 10 suns. The shell of the gravastar is utterly dark and the coldest thing in the universe, only a billionth of a degree above absolute zero. If we look at it in deep infrared, even the cosmic microwave background glows bright in comparison. How can anything made of matter be that cold? Don't all atoms jiggle back and forth? The thing is, the shell's not made out of atoms. It's made from an entirely new, unique and extreme matter that doesn't have a name yet, and that's at the very limit of what's physically possible in nature. Actually, the shell is so incredibly thin that atoms seem truly gigantic next to it. And yet, despite being ultra-thin, because it's been forged by two impossibly extreme forces, the shell is incredibly tight. So tight that if you wanted to stretch the whole shell by just 1 meter, you'd need the energy of an entire supernova. What about the inside? Well, it only gets weirder. The interior of a gravastar is perfectly simple because it's sort of empty. Completely empty. A perfect vacuum without a single atom, particle, or wave. But despite being as empty as it gets, this vacuum is boiling with the most primitive and fundamental kind of energy in the universe. We need a detour to explain how any of this makes sense. The fundamental nothingness at the core of it all. The inside of a gravastar breaks our brains a bit because it's a sort of super-condensed nothingness. What does this even mean? We'll have to simplify and use metaphors to make sense of what scientists measure and calculate. According to our current understanding of physics, particles like quarks, electrons, photons, and so on are not really solid objects, but sort of waves in an ocean. In our human world, you can't have waves without water, and in the smallest world, you also can't have particle waves without some kind of underlying, omnipresent cosmic fluid. This fluid is the vacuum, what we perceive as nothingness. It's the fundamental ocean at the bottom of reality. The waves of this vacuum ocean are the particles that make up you and everything else. But even when there are no waves or particles traveling through it, the fluid is still there, and like any fluid we know, it has inherent energy. Vacuum fluid is everywhere in the universe. The room you're in is 99.98% vacuum between the air particles bouncing around. Between the trillions of particles making up your cells, there's vacuum. But it's different inside a gravastar. When our star collapsed and condensed so violently, it was as if the universe took a cosmic pump and compressed as much vacuum fluid as physics allows, into a kind of super-dense nothingness. As said before, even without any waves, the nothingness vacuum ocean of the universe has energy. But the super-dense vacuum inside a gravastar has almost a billion, trillion times more energy per cubic centimeter than the vacuum outside the star. This is an unbelievable amount of energy and mass in a tiny space, just like, you may have guessed it, black holes. This intensely compressed vacuum ocean can't be compressed any further. It's at the absolute physical limit of anything that can be squeezed together without breaking physics, like black holes do. The ocean would love to stop being so tight. It wants to stretch out and flow back into the ocean that surrounds the star, but it's trapped in the safest prison possible. The shell, which itself is right at the edge of the physical limit of any material possible. An eternal stalemate between two limits of the universe. Let's leave this world of metaphors and get back to our world that feels more real. In our world, gravastars are perfectly black, eternal objects with borderline insane amounts of mass. Because they're so cold, dark and massive, from the outside, gravastars look and behave exactly like black holes. Both massively curve space around them and create all the fun effects we love black holes for, from trapping mass and light in accretion disks or slowing down time as you get closer. For details, we've made 1 or 2 videos on black holes before. If you fell into a gravastar, you'd be extremely dead before you even hit the surface, ripped apart and ground down by the gravitational forces. And once your scattered remains touch the shell, the atoms you were once made of would probably break down and dissolve completely, only to be converted into the vacuum energy of the interior, making the gravastar an infinitesimal bit bigger and an infinitesimal bit more massive. Okay, this was fun and all, but what exactly is the point? Isn't this just another video of wild scientific speculation just for the sake of it? The point. Black holes were suggested more than a century ago as an abstract solution to equations of gravity. For more than 50 years, they were considered mathematically valid, but too absurd to be real. Few believed they actually existed. But scientists kept working on paper and looking at weird things, and then we saw stars being thrown around by invisible titans. We saw light stretching around invisible gaps in the sky, and as our technology and theories improved, we even sort of took a picture of them. We have evidence for them, and they fit our theories. And nowadays, it's kind of common sense to accept them as real. Black holes are extremely elegant and fascinating, but they also created a lot of questions that have traumatized physicists for decades. Singularities literally break our best understanding of physics. They seem to delete information, which shouldn't be possible. Gravastars are a relatively new idea without any of those problems. They don't need singularities that break physics or delete information. They solve the puzzles of black holes, but they too create new problems, like weird exotic matter for their incredibly cold and tight shell, super dense nothing to make a supermassive empty core. But just like black holes, they do work on paper and fit what we see in the sky. So, are they real, and will we ever know? Actually, there is a way to find out. Black holes have an event horizon, while gravastars have a physical shell made of matter, which means that they behave very differently when they smash into each other. The collision of two objects as massive as they are creates huge amounts of gravitational waves, ripples in space-time that travel at the speed of light. You can think of them as the music of cosmic cataclysms. The collision of two black holes should sound like a bass drum, a deep thump that stops quickly. But two gravastars colliding should sound like a gong, leaving subtle echoes behind. Scientists are listening for these echoes in the music of the cosmos. Unfortunately, black holes and gravastars are surrounded by such strong gravity that it swamps most of the music. It's like trying to tell two instruments apart through a thick wall of concrete. You need very sharp technology for that. While we've made incredible progress in the last few years, we're not quite there yet. So this is where we'll end this story. Gravastars have the potential to answer some of the biggest problems in physics. Or they're just another idea for our discard pile. But this is why we do science. To learn that everything is different to the way we thought it is, until the day we truly understand the nature of reality. The desire to be free from the limits of the human experience is as old as our first stories. We exist in an endless universe, only bound by the laws of physics, and yet our consciousness is trapped in mortal machines made of meat. With the breathtaking explosion of innovation and progress, for the first time, the concept of leaving our flesh piles behind and uploading our minds into a digital utopia seems possible, even like the logical next step on our evolutionary ladder. Upload what exactly? Mind is one of those words that are really hard to define. It's thought to be the collective abilities of your consciousness and intelligence, the thing that lets you imagine, recognize, and dream. Mind uploading is the hypothetical concept of making a copy of this inner world and transferring it into a computer to run a simulation of your consciousness. But even defining the premise gets really hard, really fast. The possibility of mind uploading is based on 3 assumptions. Assumption 1. Your mind is in your brain's structure, arrangement, and biochemistry. The idea that everything about the mind can be found in the brain is called physicalism, and it keeps our discussion within the domain of natural law. Assumption 2. At some point, we will understand the brain well enough and possess the technology to simulate all of its aspects to make a digital mind copy. Assumption 3. Computer software can host your mind, which means the mind is computable. There is no physical property in the brain, including consciousness, that cannot be simulated accurately, even if it requires a lot of code. All of these assumptions have been proposed and challenged by scientists and philosophers, and they remain the subject of passionate debate. With so many fundamental questions still unanswered, it's hard to discuss the topic without annoying someone. Whatever your position, every discussion of mind upload has to begin with the brain. The brain in a nutshell. The brain is the most complex biological structure known and deserves its own entire video, so let's just take a brief look at it. Around 100 billion neurons are communicating via 1 million billion connections that are sending signals up to 1,000 times each second, which is 1 quadrillion events every second of your waking life. And it's not just neurons, there are billions of supporting and immune cells of various types performing different jobs. On a macro level, the brain can be divided into sections with different roles, from breathing and heart rate to coordinating movement and involuntary reflexes. The most developed parts, the neocortex, or the outermost layer of the brain, hold memories, our ability to plan, think and imagine, hope and dream. Where exactly the you part of the brain is situated is not entirely clear. We know that areas like the precuneus cortex have the greatest influence on our consciousness, but also that several areas can network together to share tasks none of them can do alone. The brain's building blocks are not exactly simple either. Neurons are not just wires, they alter and process information. Synapses, where signals are handed over from one neuron to the next, contain receptors for hundreds of chemical signals, opening them up to outside influence. We have a basic understanding of how these work, and we can accurately predict their behavior at small scales, but there's a lot more to the brain than just nerve signals. Hormones play a huge role, like serotonin, which affects our mood, or histamine, which helps us learn. The brain is influenced by our other parts too, from heart nerves to gut bacteria. What seemed like a very complicated system to begin with gets even more complicated the more we learn about it. To get this wildly interconnected mess of cells and meat and chemicals into a computer, we need a model that we can simulate in our digital world. Some sort of scan. Unfortunately, our scanning technology, like fMRI machines, is not nearly good enough to attempt such a thing. But there is a different method that seems very promising. Cutting a brain into tiny slices and scanning them with a high-resolution electron microscope to create an accurate map of all the cells and connections. In 2019, scientists successfully mapped a cubic millimeter of mouse brain, roughly the size of a big grain of sand. It contained 100,000 neurons with 1 billion synapses and 4 kilometers of nerve fibers. This grain of brain was cut into 25,000 slices. 5 electron microscopes ran continuously for 5 months, collecting more than 100 million images. It took 3 months to assemble the images into a 3D model. The completed dataset fills up 2 million gigabytes of cloud storage. To scan a whole human brain, we would have to repeat this effort 1 million times, which is much easier said than done. Even worse, to correctly simulate a brain, we might even have to map out much smaller building blocks to include the billions of underlying proteins or even individual molecules that cause all the behaviors we see at the cellular level. which might produce more data than the capacity of all data storage on Earth. Brain water to consciousness wine. While all of these issues are annoying, the real question is how we turn the static blueprint of the brain into an active thing. Even if we have a scan, down to the level of synapses, we need laws and rules that animate the wiring diagram to endow this static structure with life, update it with the various laws of chemical binding, of electrodynamics to animate the simulation. So it becomes a dynamic active thing like a brain that exists from one microsecond to the next, that can evolve in time, think, see and act. The reality is that we just don't know if this is possible to achieve. If our technology can give rise to real minds. It all hinges on the nature of the problem. Are the brain and mind just complicated and a lot of work to figure out, or are they complex in a way that we can't solve? In the worst case, consciousness is more than the sum of the parts of the brain in a way that we don't realize yet. Complex in a way that we can't solve by getting better scans. Just having a list of the ingredients might not be enough to get a good consciousness cake. Right now, we have a great starting point with tangible scientific results and an end goal, but the road to true simulation is unclear and requires a lot of innovation and research. Humans have historically been horrible at predicting the pace of progress. In the best case, it's just a matter of doing the work and finding the right solutions. It might not be necessary to simulate every last cell down to the last atom. Instead, it may be possible to simplify elements into probabilistic models that could match the behavior of the brain using a more manageable number of simpler systems. So we really don't know if we will ever understand our brain and consciousness well enough to upload human minds. But the science is real and worth pursuing. At the very least, we will just learn a lot about ourselves and develop a bunch of new technologies. If we succeed, this might put mind uploading well within the capabilities of our rapidly progressing computer technology. The consequences for humanity and our future in this universe are vast, creepy, and amazing. The copy. Successful mind uploading is functional immortality. Unless damaged or deleted, you will continue to exist as long as a copy is stored somewhere. Of course, if the scan is corrupted in any of a myriad of ways, your mind might get corrupted too. You might be in an eternity of pain or paranoia, or having an endless psychotic breakdown. The question if this digital mind is you opens another whole can of worms. For now, we'll just assume that your digital mind at least feels like it's you. How would mind uploading change your outlook on life? Will you feel safer knowing that death is not necessarily the end? Or would you try to be super safe to avoid dying before your mind is uploaded? If scanning technology does become advanced enough, your biological and digital versions could coexist. You could help each other out by making your biological lifespan more enjoyable and the future of the copy more secure. Whatever happens, your mind copy will begin a completely new life once it opens their digital eyes for the first time. Having a functional body is actually quite nice, and you're pretty used to it. Food, love, pain and exhaustion, all of these things are parts of us that we must live with. But in the end, they are the result of neurons firing in your brain. So while you could decide to live in a simulated body, it might be optional for a digital mind. Falling in love might lose meaning if you can have it at the press of a button. Instead, you might end up searching for new, extraordinary experiences. Walk on the surface of the sun. Speed up time to skip past a few boring months. Experience a simulation of the past. Your perspectives and priorities will change as you continue to exist in this liberated form. The longer digital minds exist, eventually they will likely gain greater knowledge of themselves and an ability to change their own contents. This can be as simple as deleting a memory that bugs you. You might change aspects of your personality, like grudges, addictions, or laziness. Without the constraints of biology, your abilities might move up as technology progresses, while your priorities or goals might become more and more foreign to your original brain if it's still alive. Waking up to the true potential of digital immortality will be gradual. You can start projects that would take more than a lifetime to complete. Scientists could accumulate an incredible amount of knowledge, leading to discoveries that could revolutionize the world. Adventurers could upload themselves onto small spaceships and embark on journeys to the stars, just putting themselves on pause for thousands of years at a time. Although it's unlikely that every digital mind will work for the benefit of humanity, since our current meat versions don't do that either. Some will seek power and influence and will have a literal eternity of trying to create empires. Others will begin hoarding as many resources for themselves as possible as they compete with other minds trying to do the same. The longer they live, the less sympathy they may feel for simple meat beings. Or imagine immortal cult leaders who propagate lies and invent religions, fine-tuning and perfecting their dogma over hundreds of years. Or perhaps none of all that. Maybe our minds are not made for immortality, and digital minds will just become rigid and unproductive and retire after a very long life, having experienced everything they could ever want to. It's hard to predict how much good or bad a self-improving mind could do with hundreds or thousands of years of free time. And now, we'd like to tell you a story about a Kurzgesagt video that took us over 1,000 hours to create. It all started with a simple idea. We stumbled upon something truly awe-inspiring, a piece of knowledge so important we wanted to share it with as many people as possible. So we got to work. It took many days and nights, but finally we managed to craft a perfect script. Then the illustration and animation burbs took over and the visual magic began. And at last, after over 1,000 hours of hard work, this video was ready to be released to the world, bringing joy and inspiration to so many people. So what was this very special video that took so much time, so much love, and so much effort to create? In reality, every single video we create takes this much effort. It might seem excessive for a YouTube video, but for us, it's the only way. Making each video to the best of our abilities, be it in research, writing, or visuals. Always challenging ourselves, no compromises. But there's one special group of people that make this exciting endeavor possible, our patrons. They are by our side during every part of the process, lifting us up and supporting us. Spending this much time on a single video is a really bad business decision, but our patrons make it possible. They are a vital part of the Kurzgesagt team. If you would also like to be part of our team and help us create inspiring stories, support us on Patreon. This way, you're supporting and contributing to our mission of making science and humanism appealing to as many people as possible while getting some exciting exclusive perks and insights in return, like a sneak peek into our next video, monthly behind-the-scenes updates on what's happening at the treehouse and what we're working on, as well as exclusive wallpapers or even your own unique Kurzgesagt burb created especially for you by one of our illustrators. Become a patron. Become a part of Kurzgesagt. Leaving Earth to find new homes in space is an old dream of humanity and will sooner or later be necessary for our survival. The planet that gets the most attention is Mars, a small, toxic, and energy-poor planet that just about seems good enough for a colony of depressed humans huddled in underground cities. But what if we think bigger? What if we take Venus, one of the most hostile and deadly places in the solar system, and turn it into a colony? Not by building lofty cloud cities, but by creating a proper second Earth. It might be easier than you think. Venus is by far the hottest planet in the solar system, with a surface temperature of 460 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. This heat is due to the most extreme greenhouse effect in the solar system. CO2 is great at trapping heat. Even a rise from 0.03% to 0.04% in Earth's atmosphere is heating up our planet right now. Venus's atmosphere is 97% CO2. Also, Venus's atmosphere is 93 times denser than Earth's. standing on Venus's surface would feel like taking a dive about 900 meters deep into the ocean. The pressure would kill you instantly. It's a truly horrible place, so why should we even bother? First and foremost, Venus is almost as big as Earth and has 90% of its surface gravity. Surface gravity is a big problem when colonizing the solar system because it's very likely that long stays in low-gravity places will have negative health effects. Venus's size means it could be the second largest habitat in the solar system, a new home for billions of humans and trillions of animals, with oceans, lush forests, and a beautiful blue sky. A properly terraformed Venus may be the most pleasant place to live outside of Earth. While we can't exactly terraform Venus today, a slightly more ambitious future version of us could take this project on. It will take a few generations to complete and be a huge challenge like building the Great Pyramids was for our ancestors. But then, it's not like humans have never started projects that took more than a lifetime to complete. Okay, let's do it. Before anything else, we need to cool Venus down and remove the gas that makes up the extremely heavy atmosphere. As mentioned, there's a lot of it, around 465 million billion tons. How do we do that? There are a few options. We could create giant solar collectors powering a huge array of laser beams that heat up the atmosphere so much that it's blasted into space. Although we would need thousands of times the entire power generating capacity of humanity, and it would still take thousands of years to remove the atmosphere. Another way is to sequester the atmosphere, binding the CO2 in different compounds through chemical reactions. We could mine elements like calcium or magnesium on Mercury and shoot them at Venus via mass driver systems, electric rails that make rockets unnecessary on smaller planets. The metals would combine to bind the CO2 into different carbonates basically forever. But the scale makes the whole thing impractical. We would need several 100 billion tons of material to sequester the CO2 this way. Seems like a waste of material and might take too long. An equally ridiculous idea that could actually work is to put Venus in the shade, literally, by constructing a huge mirror to blot out the sun to just freeze the atmosphere. The mirror doesn't need to be complex or massive, just a very thin foil with a little structural support. Building such a large flat surface so close to the sun will turn it effectively into a solar sail and push it out of position. So instead of one giant circular object, our mirror will consist of many different pieces. Annular slats of angled mirrors can reflect sunlight from one set of mirrors to the next. Mirrors would be angled, reflecting light from one to another until the light is redirected to the back, balancing the force on the front and holding them in position. After a few years of getting the infrastructure in place, things start slowly and then escalate. For the first few decades, the atmosphere slowly cools down but stays dense and deadly, until after some 60 years, it reaches the critical temperature of 31 degrees Celsius. Suddenly, the Great Flood begins on Venus as CO2 turns to liquid at this pressure and begins to rain down. A constant global rainstorm of unbelievable proportions lasting 30 years. The pressure and temperature suddenly begin to drop in unison. For almost a century, puddles turn into lakes and oceans. The surface temperature is now minus 56 degrees Celsius and the pressure has dropped to only 7 times the pressure on Earth. Finally, at a really unpleasant minus 81 degrees Celsius, the CO2 oceans begin to freeze and the rain turns into snow. This leaves us with a frozen Venus covered in oceans as hard as rock and gigantic CO2 glaciers. What remains of the atmosphere is mostly nitrogen at about 3 times Earth's surface pressure. If you don't mind freezing and suffocating, you can now take a stroll over Venus's surface. But the frozen CO2 remains a bit of a problem. At some point, we want to warm up the planet, but if we do, the CO2 ice will melt and fill up the atmosphere again. So we need some way to keep it from doing that. One is to simply cover it all with cheap plastic insulation and cover it up with ground-up Venus rock or water oceans. Although some planetary scientists will be very stressed out about us building a new planet containing a potential time bomb like that. A few unfortunately timed volcanoes could melt a lot of CO2 at once and ruin everything. Another obvious solution is to shoot it all out into space and collect it into a small moon for storage and future use. We can make this more efficient by using mass drivers instead of rockets, but moving all that mass will still be a pretty intense challenge that will take some time to solve. Whatever we end up doing with the atmosphere, to move forward we need water, which we could get from ice moons. Europa, a moon of Jupiter, has twice as much water as Earth's oceans. Now, catching a moon and transporting it through the solar system is not exactly easy. So instead, it might be easier to cut chunks of ice off Europa with an army of construction drones and shoot them at Venus using more of those mass drivers. Space tethers could save us a lot of effort and energy here. We made a whole video explaining how they work, but in a nutshell, they are slings that can take a payload on both ends. On Europa, they do most of the work needed to catapult our ice to Venus. The ice hits the Venus tethers, which gently drop it into the atmosphere, where it falls down as snow. In exchange, the Venus tethers get to catch CO2 ice shot up from below and accelerate it into orbit. We can remove excess nitrogen using this same method to further lower our atmospheric pressure. After a few decades or centuries, Venus would be covered by a nice, shallow, frozen ocean a few hundred meters deep. It would look extremely different from today. A few continents and countless islands have formed. This is beginning to look a bit like our planet. Now the last and most magnificent phase of terraforming begins, making the atmosphere breathable and adding life. First, we need light though, and we need to heat the planet up again. A Venus day is 2,802 hours long, more than 116 Earth days. So if we just remove our giant mirror, we would grill half of our planet. Even without the massive atmosphere, temperatures would reach unbearable levels. The simplest way to create a day-night cycle and let some energy in again is with another set of mirrors to illuminate our continents and melt our water oceans, which would let us completely control how much energy we get and where it goes. The atmosphere is now mostly made up of nitrogen and basically devoid of oxygen. So the first inhabitants will likely be trillions and trillions of cyanobacteria, which can get photosynthesizing and release oxygen. We know that they can quickly turn around the atmosphere of a planet because billions of years ago they were probably responsible for turning the toxic atmosphere of our young Earth into an atmosphere with enough oxygen for more complex animal life. But not only that, cyanobacteria can fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and turn it into nutrients that can be used by living beings. This way, they will essentially fertilize our dead ocean water and prepare it for more complex organisms. On land, our colonists need to grind down some of the former Venusian surface to make soil for nitrogen-fixing plants to grow on. Eventually, billions of trees would spread, creating large forests covering massive parts of the continents. Venus would turn green. To speed things up, CO2 would be strategically released to supply the plants and cyanobacteria. Areas already covered with plants could get extra daylight from our orbital mirrors, so the plants would be active for most of each day. Maybe we won't have to do this with the same plants and animals we know today. As genetic engineering matures and our understanding of genetics and the machinery of life expands, we might just engineer life as we need it. All in all, it would take several thousand years to make the atmosphere breathable by humans. In the meantime, you could stroll around with nothing more than regular clothes and an oxygen mask. Settlers would enjoy a vast new planet filled with resources and bathed in sunlight. They might think of new ways to use the vast amounts of carbon dioxide ice and nitrogen orbiting in space above. Industrial processes, rocket fuel, or even boosting the terraforming of another planet like tiny Mars. Venus is fully terraformed. Animals roam through vast ecosystems. Cities are being constructed. Billions of settlers and their descendants make this world their home. They will see images of the past, how Venus was once the most hostile planet around, how it took hundreds of years to freeze hell and to ship in the oceans, and another few thousand years to make it possible to breathe freely. They will barely be able to believe it. Okay, maybe it's not that easy to terraform Venus, and a lot of things must go right for this future to become reality. But it is possible, and with technology that is within the reach of a motivated and slightly more advanced humanity that wants to venture into space. The only thing that's stopping it is our imagination, and that at least is a problem that's easy to overcome.